Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the No Code Works podcast. In today's episode, we are joined by Barrett Nash, co founder and CEO of InfiniteUp, a startup that is revolutionizing app development with a small yet powerful team. InfiniteUp is making waves in the no code space. We'll be discussing no code development, its future, and how AI is shaping the next generation of startups. We'll be also exploring how no code tools are empowering entrepreneurs to build without needing any coding skills. So let's dive into today's conversation. So, hi Barrett, thank you for joining us. Just to start with, could you tell us, how you co-founded InfiniteUp, a little bit about the company, about the team?
Sure. So InfiniteUp is my second startup. My last startup was a on-demand ride-hailing company in sub-Saharan Africa, and I was not technical enough to build our own products. And I didn't like the feeling that the tech that was being built was like in a black box. So I wanted in the future to be able to be more involved in technology. But brains are wired differently. So when I first discovered actually Adalo, it was like kind of like a revelation because it was just more wired to how my brain works. Like code is such a different thing than visual. I began building lots of apps myself with Adalo, and then building a team around me, which is InfiniteUp, where what we discovered was it made sense to begin dividing roles between people. Like, say, for example, design. I'm a terrible designer. Quality assurance, doing API calls, things like this. While Adalo was great, Adalo has severe limitations in terms of, beyond before anything, intellectual property, since Adalo really holds onto that stuff, as well as, frankly, Adalo, I think doesn't create cutting-edge, fast-feeling apps. So we began using Flutterflow just as an experiment, and then haven't looked back. Flutterflow is far more challenging. I would say it's more about visual software development than no code, low code. But with Flutterflow, we've been able to now make maybe 20 to 30 apps as a company for ourselves and as an agency, and believe that right now, when we're trying to bring customers on board, our pitch is that Flutterflow is the best way to build apps in the world today. That's why we use it.
That's great. So, can you say that since you had that feeling that you were not able to understand what you were doing in your previous company, and that's why you switched to no code?
So absolutely. It's, for one, every couple of years, software development paradigm changes. So the way we were building previously on React and PHP, I feel like it hasn't kind of kept up to what industry best practices are for what a small team is capable of. But that was the first thing that pushed me into no code, wanting to be able to become more deeply involved personally in the software development cycle. And now, with Flutterflow, Flutterflow, a lot of what we do is custom Flutter Dart code, doing custom cloud functions, doing custom actions. It's still actually very codey, but it's a more intuitive interface that I think brings things together in a visual framework that is something that feels like we're gone from. For myself, I never thought I'd be able to build my own products, and now I feel like I'm running circles around those people who I was intimidated by 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and feel it's not an egotistical thing to say that with these tools we're using, Flutterflow, OpenAI, Firebase, that we're able to be at the very cutting edge of what software can do, and not just from a small team perspective. With these AI APIs being brought into a no-code framework, it's amazing the potential of what can be built.
What you are saying, I can totally relate because I come from a non-technical background, and not just you. I've spoken to many people who have pursued, no code development, and they couldn't do coding, they couldn't understand, or whatever the reasons were, and they feel that they still feel the same feeling. It's good that I am making something for clients and for myself, and it's a great feeling, builder feeling. So that is something I think I can relate, and everyone who is pursuing no code because they couldn't code or they can not understand it, they get the feeling. So I think it has really changed the industry to some another level. Um, Up to one perspective that you said that you had a ride hailing app which you built. So building a product and building products and projects for the clients, how do you think it's different?
You mean between building projects for like myself and my company and building projects for third parties?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like actually the greatest thing about client work is that you're basically getting paid to dive deeper and learn more greatly the tool. So like typically like with a startup, what you do is you've got like an idea and then you spend like, a year, maybe multiple years working on that same product. I actually think that creates like a lot of like kind of like bad habits, because sometimes, when you're working for a client, you can do things fast. You're going through the entire cycle of the work process, right? And it's been like, I feel like a win-win where we take this fast cycle, always doing new things that we learn from clients, and we bring it into the startup side of ourselves for our products, to be reminded to like move fast and don't get stuck in things. Sometimes you just have to throw an entire app out if it's not working, even if you love it. But then for clients, they really benefit from the fact that, we're not trying to just create cookie cutter apps. We're trying to actually be the best we can because we want to be able to rise above in our own products. There's no prize for second best in software. I will say though that a big difference is working with clients is the client is the boss. And like, when you're working with many clients, doing things for yourself, like, of course I have many opinions on like what best practice should be. What is a good onboarding? What is like an intuitive user interface? What is the approach to technology? But then clients, often this will be the first app they've done. And many of the things that I reflect on over the last 50 apps I've built, I could tell them like, well, here's my experience. And I do try to, but also like, they need to kind of like experience it for themselves. So often with clients, it's making sure that like they're in the driver's seat, but then taking all these insights and bringing it to other clients and bringing it into our own projects is really empowering. And I think it's actually like kind of almost like a model for the future, like startup agency hybrids, because usually startups are VC backed, but it can be such a pain to get VC. And, when you take money from VCs, there's lots of strings attached with that, right? And in this era of it's never been cheaper to be able to launch a startup, right? So where before, like the amount of money to do a startup successfully was kind of like insurmountable from like money from your own pocket or like small amounts. Now with running like an agency, we're able to kind of self-fund in a way that the work we're doing to create our funding empowers us to become better at doing our core task of building technology products as a startup.
Yeah, I mean, that's really true because, right now, if I have to launch a product, I can really launch an MVP in a very cost effective way. And that has really been a game changer for many people who just wanted to get started, and they were not starting because of, the money. And it's very difficult to find VC for any project. And, the idea has to be very unique.
I mean, like, it's very easy if you're not the son of a millionaire or billionaire in San Francisco who's at Stanford, right?
Yeah. So, but your team is small, right? You mentioned that there are 4 people in it, and you have worked on a lot of apps. So we're not just talking about AI, no code. We're also talking about how people are building startups, how they're sustaining it. See, building startup is one thing, creating startup and then sustaining it throughout the years is also a very tedious and heavy task. And to do this
it's not tedious. It's so much fun. It's a pleasure. I mean, what fun toys we get to play with all day.
Yeah, but it can get wrong, right? I mean, so I just wanted to ask, how do you find the right set of people for, and how can, as a founder, as a CEO, you think that this is the right fit, this is a cultural fit for our company?
Well, I think one of the fascinating things about no code, especially when I was kind of adopting it in early 2020, that it was very much kind of like still establishing like what are the best practices, right? What do teams look like? What do work structures look like? So when I started building, I was working just by myself, but I could see that like some things like, like all my designs look like it was like from like the Matrix or something, right? Like I couldn't design things that were beautiful. And I didn't actually go out with the intention of building a greater team, but I kind of like actually just like found like some like magic people. So I was invited to be teaching no code, low code to an education program throughout like multiple countries. It was kind of like my side job. I was just such a believer in the empowering technology that some friends of mine involved in education kind of like just, basically flew me around and had me go speak. And what I wasn't kind of expecting from this was that I would kind of find some magical people. So my team, there's just 4 of us, like myself, and then Wasim, who is a very talented designer who'd never built an app before. And we just decided one day, like over an afternoon, and he reverse engineered Twitter, right? And he'd never built something before. Now he'd built something like Twitter, and he is somebody who understands design, understands brand. But it's been really impressive to see that over the couple of years working together, he's been going deeper and deeper into front end development and building actions. And like now he's able to do that. Then my colleague Malaz, he's a classic developer, but didn't have like a great sense of design or like front end stuff. And while he could do things through pure code, one of the nice things about like say Flutterflow is it provides like a workspace of collaboration where everybody can kind of work together on. And he's able to do things like I love it because I'll have like these technical challenges in my head, things that if I was to try to do myself, I've tried and I loop around and just don't accomplish. But he like does it easily, knock on wood. It's like asking for like a magic trick and he like brings it out. And then the final element is something that doesn't have to do with no code. I think every team, it's having like a QA person, someone who, because I don't know, I'm sure you've had this experience and talked to people, like the number of people who have to go do a demo for a client or an investor. And like, the developer had just made a change 10 minutes before and the whole app doesn't work or something, right? So having like a firm QA, I mean, it's bizarre, right? It's like, but so having like a firm QA process is really important. Then the QA person also manages our project management system. And then I come in and I do things like publish the app. I do things like train the AIs. I do like the text, like making sure all the text is sharp. And what we've kind of done is, for one, we have a lot of roles where we overlap on. So like, if somebody can do something, we can do it. But we're also kind of like dividing and conquering. So everybody kind of has their specialty and we feed together. And we're kind of like still doing this. So say, for example, in Flutterflow, there's quite a powerful animations engine. And we didn't have somebody who specialized on animations. So actually, we have our QA person now doing animations. That's like one of their spheres in the app. Now we're going, there's haptic feedback. Well, haptic feedback is kind of related to animations. Okay, we'll try doing haptic feedback. So like say Flutterflow, like I really, something that I've been like kind of mindful of is I kind of disagree with the wording no code, low code. I appreciate your podcast is called No Code, so you're not going to go about rebrand. But like I feel like the challenge with no code is that it's like kind of a semi-degrading word, right? So like, people when they hear no code, they think, it should be easier or it's not as respected, when actually like it's more just like a different style of software development, which can take frankly just as much time and just as much skill, but like kind of in a different mechanism. I do believe you can go faster because it's clearer, there's less steps. So like say publishing to iOS and Android from Flutterflow, saves me maybe 20 hours just on that single step, right? But I believe that the way we're doing this is kind of like superior and it's where the future is. But I think that it's like important to kind of like appreciate that this is not a cheap way to do it. It's like the next step of the evolution of software development.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you have mostly talked about, Flutterflow. So starting with this, we were like working on Bubble and I have experience in Bubble and then...
But Bubble like broke my mind. I've tried so many times to do like the Bubble tutorials and like it's just like I really think what we're like almost like looking at is like it's like everybody has like neurodivergence, like just different types, right? It's almost like what's your stack of choice?
Yeah.
And I feel like previously it was just assumed that like, it had to be like this text-based. And when you like think about like classic coding, it's almost kind of like nonsensical that the way you create a visual software experience that's beautiful is through like text that hasn't changed all that much since like the 1980s, right?
Yeah.
But that was just the way it was. And I feel like rather than like no code, we're seeing like a greater divergence of approaches to software development that can be more inclusive for different intellectual types and different type of team dynamics.
So, Barrett, you talked about, how you, from your core, you believe in no code, because you mentioned that, you were traveling to teach low code to people, right? So what future do you think it holds in like 5 to 10 years? Because now AI has been introduced. So what do you think?
Well, like, we use AI a lot at InfiniteUp. Of course, building AI products via API, primarily through OpenAI, but then also, using AI to assist us in software development. Now, I know that there's been like a lot of like noise about like vibe coding, or like say in Flutterflow, like it's pretty cool. Like, like you can have an app made, you can have screens made. But what I find is it's more like almost like tech demo than it is like finished product, right? Like, these AI assisted tools, they don't like actually, link to the database. They don't create like actual functionality that can be usable. Now, is that happening in the future? For sure it is. But also like, it still needs like kind of instructions on like sort of what is the logic. Where I imagine it's going is that for sure, like a lot of software developers' roles are going to change. But I think it's going to be, there's always going to need to be humans in the loop. You're never going to be able to make like, a multi-million-dollar company via prompt of like, like make me the world's greatest running app, right? It's going to be, well, like frankly, I think it's going to be more about like the business side and actually like empowering business people who see opportunities. Like you see like a gap, like say, for example, like today, I'm going on a call with a client who's working on like a project for like a bucket list, like things you want to do before you hit the bucket, I guess, and like making like a social network out of it. Like nice idea. So I think that what we're going to see is developers are going to have to change, and they're going to be more like almost like cooks in a kitchen, where they're going to be, taking all these different ingredients, but they need to know like sort of dishes they want, and AI is going to assist them with this, with this. But like for people who don't know, like, if you don't know like that, say for releasing notifications to Android, you need to have an SHA key linked in your Android development environment, your console. Well, then like, like those steps, like there's still so many steps in what it takes to release an app to the public. There's also so many steps in like this, what it takes to make an app successful that like this type of AI stuff doesn't do, right? How do you make your first user happy? How do you determine like the best business model? What is the actual way that you like create an app that delivers delight? In an era where anybody is going to be able to make apps, that's again, like it's like almost like restaurants. It's not so different than saying like, well, anybody can cook, but does that mean that their restaurant will be successful, right? So I think we're going to see the actual software development side of things become less of a barrier for the creation of companies. It'll never be easier to create software-powered companies. But then what we're going to see is, frankly, like I think just a lot of bad companies doing things that, another gym app, another clone of Facebook or something. So I think that AI is going to lower the barrier to entry from technical skills, but then that wasn't the only barrier to entry to being successful in creating technology-based companies, right? So I think we're going to see new bottlenecks, new barriers, like that will be the things that stop. But I think that'll be quite cool. Because like, say, for example, like I'm sure if you've been working in software, you see that like a lot of things like say our user interface challenges, like we have many clients who want to have like a 40-step onboarding process, right? And, people don't go through that. They'll fall off, right? So it takes a certain mindset, certain research that humans are still going to need power in. So like, hey, AI, thank you for this MVP you made yesterday. Now let us go and release it to 20 test users, watch how they use it, create the next batch of insights, feed that back to the AI, get the next build powered by AI, released to next 20 users. It's going to be more like flows like this instead of like, well, frankly, like, I feel like the whole software industry is going to go through what kind of happened with me of trying to not make software a black box. I feel like software is a black box, but a lot of the rarefied skills that are kind of being challenged right now in software, I feel like a lot of it was kind of like Wizard of Oz, where like a lot of it wasn't like, like think of how many like back-end database engineers who like, now that you're probably getting good at doing database stuff, right? You're going like, wow, like this guy was making like, 6 figures doing like, this is a full-time job when this is like, 15 minutes at the start of the app process and kind of like done, right? Like, were those roles actually so rarefied? And I feel bad. I think a lot of people are going to lose their jobs because their niche just isn't kind of existing anymore. But then like life is competitive. And I know like say in America, like I was just reading this article about how frustrated a lot of computer science grads are because like it's really hard to get a job, but also like, well, for one, like technology has usually been the disruptor. So it's actually kind of hilarious watching technology disrupt itself, right? But things always need to be changing. And I think that roles that the solution is not going to be a company of 1,000 people or maybe even 100 people in technical roles. I think that adds more layers, makes more complexity. And, now it's going to be smaller teams doing more. And what used to be 10 people will still be 1 person, but you're still going to need people in the loop, right? Like AI doesn't do things for you. AI is your assistant, not your leader.
I mean, what you said to an extent, I agree with it. But don't you think that right now we are talking about what AI can do, obviously, but then there is the versions of AI that will come in future. So do you feel that it's gonna eliminate the things what we are doing with no code?
Well, like, no. Like, I think, again, like, I prefer, like, visual software development environment over no code. So, like, say, like, Flutterflow, I feel like only one piece of it is, like, the software development, like, replacing coding style. It's also, like, having your design system and managing your publishing and coordinating your database. And, like, like, the fact is, like, say you're creating an app, the app needs a backend like Microsoft Azure or Amazon AWS or Google's Firestore. And, no matter how advanced the AI is kind of getting, there's, say, like permissions that need to be set manually, like rules and things that, like, AI is not going to replace because it needs a judgment call. I feel like where AI is not great is like, it shouldn't replace the judgment calls. So like AI might come back and say like, here's the rules I suggest, here's the pros, here's the cons. There's also like, so say just to link Flutterflow to like Google Play Console or Apple App Store Connect, for example. It's a back and forth process. And like say like, will AI be able to do that stuff in the future? Well, yeah, then there'll be like the next bottleneck. It's always like, when you're doing like problem triaging, you go from bottleneck to bottleneck. So I feel like AI has solved a huge bottleneck of you need a bunch of expensive coders, but then there's new challenges. I also feel like AI has slowed down. I'm sure you're following the news, how like GPT-5 has kind of been a bit of a dud, right? I'm using it myself. I'm still playing around. Well, it seems to be getting better, but for sure, like it's not making my brain explode going like, wow, like this is like a major breakthrough. And there's some theories that like maybe like, like say Sam Altman is saying like maybe we're experiencing the limits of what like a chat bot is capable of. And then there's like agent work, which OpenAI is also showing to ChatGPT users, but it's also like pretty limited these days. And what I'm thinking of is like, if AI was continuing every year to go from a jump as what it did from 3.5 to 4, well then like like the whole conceptualization of work is under assault in the next like 5 years. But instead, I feel like almost like what we've been doing for the last like year or two, it's now not going to change, but I think it's actually going to like kind of formalize where AI is like a part of this workflow with humans still firmly in the loop, and that it's just going to kind of get cleaner and better. So like, say for example, how I often build is I'll have like Flutterflow or my primary screen on one screen, then ChatGPT on the other screen, and basically like I'll work until I get stuck. And when I get stuck, I've got my trained AI, I take a screenshot, slide it over there and get stuck. And often it's bad, right? Often it pushes me in the wrong direction. What I expect is that it will in the future get better at giving me help as I need it. But like, I still feel like this experience of like a human being working, getting stuck, going to AI unblocks, like this general back and forth between a human and AI is going to be the future. It's not going to be AI replacement. It's rather going to be a symbiotic relationship between human and AI, with hopefully, basically, as time goes, where the AI and the human together, do the power of like, say, 5 employees or 50 employees. I imagine it might go to like 500 employees or 5,000 employees, but still this symbiotic of working, getting stuck, AI, working, getting stuck, AI.
I think that's an interesting take, what you have mentioned here. But in the conversation, you have mentioned Flutterflow a lot of time. So I'm assuming it's your favorite tool, right? So
I think I mentioned Adalo a lot as well. And I don't know if you saw, but I actually used to work with Adalo. But I think, I believe that Flutterflow is the most advanced way for the best, like defensively, the best way to build apps today. Like you're saying you're using Bubble, like I feel like Bubble is, like kind of great, cool, amazing what you can build. But like Flutterflow feels like where Bubble, I feel like it's kind of getting old. It's a bit atrophied. It's almost like reminding me of like WordPress or something, where like, I don't know, Flutterflow still is kind of blowing my mind every day. And Flutterflow themselves as a company. So like say Adalo, when we were there, we released responsive, Adalo 2.0, right? So before it was like only mobile, then they're like responsive, so it could be mobile and desktop. And it took us a solid year. But like say Flutterflow, like just added that as like one of 30 features, and they're like, monthly updates without even a big fuss. Like Flutterflow is moving fast, and like, I feel like it's actually getting ahead rather behind. Now, if somebody else came up, like I'm always watching, and I'm watching a lot of this vibe coding stuff as well. Like, is it getting to this point where like suddenly, but like I really don't think this vibe coding stuff is really it's creating flashy stuff. Like I don't know if you've used this dreamflow.com. You can play around with it for free for a bit. It's from Flutterflow as well. Like make an app for a prompt. And like, for somebody who's not technical, it will like blow them away. Because like, whoa, there's like an entire app here off of my prompt. But like, it's really like more work, like with what they give you. It's all like, say all the back end. It's like all like fake. It's designed to make it look correct. But like, say like when you do something, it doesn't actually save a record. Or like a good example too is like, say when you're creating a visual design in Flutterflow, it follows like an hierarchy, like very similar to traditional coding, like, columns and rows and stuff. And with the AI stuff, while they do a good job of making it look correct, it's like crazy the way they actually like organize the things. Like it doesn't, it's like not done in a way that you can kind of do anything with. So like what we actually do is we use it as influence, and like it answers a lot of hard questions. Like actually I think the best thing AI has done for me so far has done things of like, what's like intuitive button placement, and like what's like the correct like way a form should look for this new feature. Like it's really creative at answering hard questions. But I feel like my hope was that they would basically drop it to us and we build on top of it. Where we're at now is it's good for influence, but we still start from scratch because like in software development, it's like building a house. The foundation has to be solid. Every stage has to be solid. And I feel like a lot of these ones, it's more like almost making like a Hollywood movie set of an app. And like it doesn't withstand to scrutiny, but it can look real for a moment. And it can look real to the casual observer who doesn't kind of know what things should actually be going on there. That it's all just window dressing.
Yeah, I totally agree to that because, I have used a couple of AI tools where you write a prompt and give you a nice visual effect, applications. But once you see the backend, you'll understand, it's not right. It's not correct. So, in that front, I agree that it's not quite at that stage yet.
And that shows too that like, traditional skills aren't going away, right? Because it takes a lot to have that skill set just to look at something and go, oh, that's garbage. Or someone who's not, they're like, oh, look, I'm a genius.
Yeah. But to some extent, it's also, you talked about, you are not good at design, but now Figma launched an AI. You can create a design landing page in like 2 minutes. You write the prompt, it will create the whole design. So somewhere it's going to, cut that time period, where people were taking, obviously, what a designer can do, what they have learned, they cannot replicate the same, because good designer will always catch it. But yeah, to some extent that they will also, change client expectation to, to the agencies, to the designers, to the developers who are building on something. Do you think?
Yeah. Well, like, for sure, I think it's been a while since, like, you used to be like, like say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like to build like an app, it would be expected to be like, $150,000, something like that, like minimum. Now, like, one of the reasons I don't like no code as a word is because I think it does make it seem too easy, where like I'll get like leads of like, make me a whole app for like $50, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of like not how it is going to be. But like, I feel like it is making things more accessible. So like, for sure, like where, there's a lot of space between $50 for an app and, $500,000. But at the end of the day, like, so like say design's a good question. So yes, AI can make good design, but it's still like, so like say the way we do design now is we like, start with like an interview with the client, understand like what do they want? What are the features? How do they kind of see it working? Deep diving it, like what are their brand aesthetics? What are things they like? And then we'll like take the transcript and we'll like push it through like AI, like ChatGPT, make an image and be like, make like 5 images of a homepage for an app like this, right? Then, it's like going back to the client, like, how do you feel about this? What do you like? And like, it's this kind of back and forth. And it actually might take the same amount of time as doing a normal app. But like say with a normal app, you get things like this, like 40-page onboarding, because the actual like hard questions are being done from like the client's head or the designer's head, or now like AI is in the loop itself. And like, it can not have a problem saying like, here's like a better way to do it. So like my hope isn't that we necessarily like eliminate software development as it is, but actually that we start getting better apps. And one of the secrets, well, I don't think it's a secret, but like, most apps that are made on Bubble, that are made by no code, get 0 users, right? Like, like they're built and people put time on it. There's like nothing worse as being a software developer and seeing like an app get no users, because it's like, making, sorry, I'm on the restaurant man side, but it's like making dinner and nobody eats it, right? Like, even if it's beautiful and you did your job as a chef, it's like it was made to be consumed, right? So my hope is that what we see with AI are better apps that people want to use, like, hey, AI, here's my idea for an app. Is it a good idea? No, it's a horrible idea. Oh, good. I'll do something else.
Yeah. That's true. Well, so one thing more, just, since we're talking about clients and their expectations, when our clients come to you, do they come with a tech stack, or do you tell them like this is the best stack to go ahead with? Do they mention any other tech stack? What do you know?
That's a fair question. So like a lot of people, so like we're primarily getting clients through the platform Contra, where we're like established by Flutterflow themselves as Flutterflow experts. And, these are the tags we're using. And what I find is like, there's many stacks out there, but like in terms of like creating customer satisfaction and in terms of like being efficient to work, it's better kind of for everybody to like not be a jack of all trades, but for us to be really good at what we're good at. So like for us, like our preference is, building on Flutterflow, using a Firebase backend. Maybe we could use something else, but like, that's kind of like the default one. And then if we're going to be bringing in AI, we'll use OpenAI, could be Gemini, could be Anthropic, could be DeepSeek, but like, we're really comfortable with the OpenAI APIs. And that's also where most of our products have been built on. So like, if somebody wants to build like an AI chatbot app that tells them their perfect workout and creates like a custom workout, well, then it would be very easy for us to do that with Flutterflow, with Firebase, with OpenAI, because we've done similar things like a dozen times. we don't have to go and like, how do you build this with Bubble, right? Step one. So I think it's actually like, like many people like, it used to be like if you saw like CVs, like resumes, like a couple of years ago, I guess some people are probably still doing this. And it's like they list like every software development language and every single technology in the world, like under the planet on their CV, right? Where I feel like actually like, what we're best at is Flutterflow, Firebase, and OpenAI. You really want to work with us? Sure, we can build on anything, but we'll probably be slower because of it. And if you're willing to pay for us to go through the learning curve, sure. But even then, I'd want an even bigger premium because it's also not creating a reinforced feedback loop where the things that we learn get fed back into like ourselves. Like, the more products we build on a Flutterflow, Firebase, OpenAI stack, the better we get at a Flutterflow, Firebase, OpenAI stack.
No, I think that seems fair. That's your style. We are short on time, so this is the last question. I want you to give advice to budding founders or developers, low code developers. Anything that you have learned and you think that if you can pass on, that will really help them.
Check out Adalo and Flutterflow. Like if somebody's still like just starting for the first time, I'd still say Adalo because like Flutterflow, like I can't build on Flutterflow like as I built on Adalo. Like Adalo itself is a very easy first step. Like, go and like make Twitter in 15 minutes, even if you don't kind of know what you're doing. Have AI, like I said, on the other side. Try it out. And then like I'd say actually if there's like kind of anything to be looking at, it's the API side of things. Like I feel like API is like the glue of all these different systems together. And I feel like what a lot of technology products are, it's just like a pretty simple front end. And then like with APIs, you can make it do like really like magic things. And APIs, for one, like they're written in JSON language, which is like a language that AI is extremely good at making. It's quite simple. And it's like now, like instead of like starting from scratch, I almost feel like it's like looking at all the services in the world that are out there and thinking about how you glue them together to make new products, and you glue them together with APIs. So like, if you want to, what you can do with APIs used to be like $1 billion, upfront stuff, which now you can do, in 20 minutes sitting by a pool. And it's feasible, not unfeasible. It's like one of those words that like, even I think, well, I didn't ask you, but like many people like, what is an API? What does it do? It's a scary thing. It's like, whoa. Like, a lot of this stuff, like, I guess also like lose the imposter syndrome too. Because like, AI, I remember like my best friend used to say like he wanted to get into AI. And I was like, whoa, you're like a genius. Like, oh, even just like saying it, right? Where now it's like, oh, like, like better like make an AI chatbot over lunch, right? So like, like, and even like generative artificial intelligence itself, like it only came out in like 2022 or something, like when it became publicly kind of like accessible. So like everybody's kind of like, oh, like how can you be an expert when like things are still so new? So like don't feel like you've missed the party. The party's just starting, and go out and like, ask ChatGPT, like what's the best way today to like, create technology that gets users that love, and focus more on the business. So like one, I feel like so many people focus on the product, but actually like product's pretty easy. Most products fail, not because the product isn't cool, but because it doesn't have a business model that makes sense or works. So like, great that AI is helping on one side of things, but now you need to focus on different set of things. User acquisition, user retention, unit economics, lifetime value, cost of customer acquisition, and, creating products that hook users.
Yeah, thank you so much, Barrett, for joining us. I think the session was entirely insightful, and you spoke very well about, no code future, and you put a different perspective, I feel, to what we think, what usually people think about no code, low code. And yeah, it was great having you. Thank you.
Oh, really a pleasure. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you for including me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.